Most people think a self-sustaining backyard farm requires acres. Some of the most productive backyard food systems in the country run on less than a quarter acre, pulling hundreds of pounds of food every year. The question isn't whether your backyard is big enough, it's whether you're using it right. This video walks through exactly what that looks like from the ground up. The average American household spends around $5,000 a year on groceries. Most of that food travels over 1,000 miles before it reaches your plate. It gets picked early, packed, shipped, stored, and by the time it arrives, much of the nutrition has already degraded, and the price keeps climbing. Now imagine a third of that food came from your own backyard. Not a massive farm, not a homestead with livestock and a barn, just a well-designed backyard food system. What does that actually look like? Most people get the starting point wrong. When someone decides to grow their own food, they buy a few tomato plants, maybe some peppers, put them in the ground, and wonder why by August everything looks exhausted and half dead. The reason is almost always the same. They started with the plants, not the system. A self-sustaining backyard farm isn't a collection of plants. It's a living system where every element supports the others. Soil feeds the plants. Plants feed the soil back. Water gets captured and reused. Perennials produce year after year with almost no effort. Over time, the system becomes more productive, not less. The first time I walked through a backyard built this way, it was maybe 800 square feet. Suburban neighborhood, regular house, neighbors on both sides. It didn't look like a garden. I'm more like something deliberately overgrown and layered. The person who built it spent about 45 minutes a week maintaining it. That spring, he'd already pulled over 60 pounds of food from that space. 60 pounds from less than a quarter of a standard backyard. That's what a system does. Layer 1. Soil. Most people skip this and pay for it all season. You don't feed plants, you feed the soil, and the soil feeds the plants. Healthy soil is a living ecosystem, billions of microorganisms, fungi, and bacteria breaking down organic matter and delivering nutrients directly to your roots. When that system is working, your plants almost take care of themselves. When it isn't, you're constantly fighting, buying fertilizers, dealing with disease, wondering why nothing looks right. The simplest way to build living soil is through composting and wood chip mulch. Kitchen scraps, yard waste, fallen leaves. A good compost pile turns all of that into some of the most fertile growing material available, and it costs almost nothing to make. Add a thick layer of wood chips to your beds and something starts happening beneath the surface. The mulch holds moisture, suppresses weeds, and as it breaks down, feeds the soil underneath. Month after month, the ground gets richer without extra work. This is the difference between a garden that exhausts you and one that runs itself. Get this part right and the rest becomes easier. Skip it and you'll fight your soil all season. Layer 2. Water. Most backyard growers don't think about water until there's a problem. A dry July, a water restriction, got a bill that comes in higher than expected. By then, you're already reacting. A single 55-gallon rain barrel connected to a downspout can collect thousands of gallons over a growing season. In most regions, that meaningfully offsets what you'd otherwise pull from a tap. If you want to go further, swales, which are shallow trenches dug along the natural contour of your yard, slow rainfall down and direct it toward your planting areas instead of letting it run off into the street. It's one of the oldest land management techniques around, and it works on a suburban lot just as well as on a hillside farm. Water isn't a utility you pay for. It's a resource that falls on your property for free. How much you capture is up to you. Layer 3. Perennials. Most backyard gardens run on annuals. Tomatoes, squash, beans, cucumbers. You plant in spring, harvest through summer, everything dies in fall, and you start from zero next year. That cycle works, but it's also where most of the labor lives. Perennials change the math. Fruit trees, berry bushes, asparagus, rhubarb, established herb beds. Put them in once and they come back year after year with almost no intervention. A blueberry bush can produce for 20 to 30 years. A dwarf apple tree, once it matures, can drop 80 to 100 pounds of fruit. in a season from a space smaller than a parking spot. On a summer morning, that might mean walking outside with a bowl and coming back 10 minutes later with blueberries, a handful of herbs, maybe a few greens for lunch. No room for trees. Berry bushes grow in large containers. Strawberries thrive in raised beds or hanging planters. A few perennial herbs in pots on a porch is still a perennial system. The scale adjusts. The principle stays the same. Layer 4. Diversity. A monoculture is fragile by design. One pest, one disease, one stretch of bad weather, and the whole thing is at risk. Nature doesn't build systems that way. When you mix crops using companion planting, intercropping, edibles alongside flowers, beneficial insects show up. Pollinators establish themselves. Pest pressure drops naturally because no single insect can dominate a complex environment. Instead of one big harvest window in midsummer, food comes out of the garden across the entire season. A diverse garden is harder to kill. That resistance to failure is what food security looks like when it's built into the ground. One thing worth saying that rarely comes up in these conversations: the biggest change isn't what ends up in your kitchen, it's how you start thinking. When you produce even a small percentage of your own food, you stop seeing your backyard as something to maintain. You start seeing it as something that works for you. That shift changes how you approach water, waste, seasons, preparation. You start noticing things, planning ahead, thinking in systems. Some people prefer to map all of this out before they start, so the layers actually work together instead of competing. There's a structured framework called the Backyard Miracle Farm System that shows how to design this step by step. If you want to apply it to your own space, the link is in the pinned comment. Before you go, what does your backyard look like right now? Full sun? A partial shade? Mostly pavement? A single raised bed? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious where people are starting from, and it helps me know what to cover next. A self-sustaining backyard farm won't replace the grocery store. That's not what it's for. The point is building a system, a live soil, captured water, perennial plants, real diversity that shrinks your dependence on the supply chain a little more every season. It doesn't require acres, it doesn't require a big budget or years of experience. It requires deciding the space behind your house is worth more than grass. The households that hold up during food inflation, shortages, and supply chain disruptions aren't the ones who stockpiled and waited. They're the ones who built something living, something that keeps producing season after season. You don't have to build it all at once. One bed, one barrel, one fruit tree. The system grows with you. The best time to plant a fruit tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is this weekend. If this gave you something useful, hit the like button. It helps more people find this channel. Subscribe if you want to keep building this kind of independence, one video at a time. See you in the next one.